Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, and this is a Fox News alert. The White House pushing back against a bombshell Washington Post report. The headline of the Post story says, quote, Trump revealed highly classified information to Russian foreign minister and ambassador. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster spoke to reporters from the White House denying the report.
There's nothing that the president takes more seriously than the security of the American people. The story that came out tonight, as reported, is false. The president and the foreign minister reviewed a range of common threats to our two countries, including threats to civil aviation. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed. And the president did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known. Two other senior officials who were present, including the Secretary of State, remember the meeting the same way and have said so. Their on-the-record accounts should outweigh those of anonymous sources. And I was in the room. It didn't happen.
Joining us now with more is Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts. Good evening, John. So obviously a big breaking news story. You saw that very strong definitive statement from H.R. McMaster. What's the latest?
Well, I can tell you that nobody at the White House is happy that all of this happened, Kimberly, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it. I talked with a senior official here at the White House who told me, quote, the fact that someone would leak this is astonishing and it shows, quote, an extraordinary lack of concern for national security. The White House, frankly, is baffled as to how all of this got out. You heard H.R. McMaster say that there were a limited number of people in the Oval Office. Clearly, there were some aides as well who were present. But the fact that that the details of this meeting with such a small circle of people could get out is baffling to the White House, also very troubling. However, for us as journalists, in H.R. McMaster's statement, he did not say what the nature of the information was that the president shared. And here's where we get into a little bit of an area that's of concern to some people who have been in this business for a long time, and that is the intelligence business. That this was said to be an intelligence document that was developed by one of our partners, maybe a partner in the region, and that the president didn't have, quote, ownership of this. And while the president can go out there and talk about anything he wants, classified or not, the fact that this might have come from a third country is something that's troubling because it might actually compromise in the hands of the Russians the sources and methods used by that third country to develop their intelligence. Kimberly?
All right, John, thank you. We're going to take it around the table. We have some questions for you, Dana.
So, John, I have a couple questions. So there was a report that after the meeting, is it true that the NSC called the NSA and the CIA to report about the meeting because they were concerned about something? Did that actually happen?
We don't have any independent reporting on that. We can only go by the story in which this all first came to light, and that's in the Washington Post, which says that the NSC called the CIA and the NSA, the National Security Agency, to tell them that the president had shared this document. We don't know what the substance of those conversations was or what the reaction was at the CIA and the NSA. I'm sorry, Dana, I'm a little devoid of a deeper level of understanding of that particular
you don't have to apologize. It's difficult because obviously it's breaking news, and something like this would be so classified. The White House communications team, they would never know about it. So now they're having to scramble on a story. But that is possibly, I guess, the story is about the leak.
And here's one thing we do know about this information is that it had to do with threats to airlines, which would put it in the realm of this whole laptop threat. You know, laptops have been banned on flights coming into the United States, at least in the cabin, from the Middle East. That's now been expanded to Europe. Russia faces the same threat. So we're hearing from sources that, you know, why wouldn't the White House share that sort of information with another country that is under the same sort of threat, and in particular, a country with which the president would like to work together to defeat ISIS. So there may be less there to this actual information than what's being posited by some news organizations.
Okay, and we're going to take it to Jesse and then Bob.
John, how many people were at the meeting, number one, and were they all aides? Did each individual there have an aide, and have they narrowed down the amount of people that were there? Because this is turning into a leak investigation, and can't you go up to one of these aides who I assume did the leaking? I assume it's not McMaster. You assume it's not Tillerson. It's got to be an aide, and say, hand over your BlackBerry, or let me see your computer, or who did you call? Is that happening right now? It seems like that would be the top priority of the Trump White House.
Well, first of all, we don't know the exact number of people that were in the meeting. We do know that there were 4 principals, the president, Rex Tillerson, H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, and Dina Powell, who's the Deputy National Security Advisor for Strategy. And then there would be a number of aides as well. We know that Lavrov and Kislyak were there. We know that there was a photographer who was operating on behalf of the Russian government who was there, who also happened to apparently be a journalist because those photos were published, and then the Russians would have had a number of aides as well. You can bet that this White House is actively trying to trace down the source of this leak. I do not know if it's been narrowed down to any particular group of people. I've been told that a memo was not broadly circulated about the contents of this meeting, but I'm also hearing that there were electronic communications regarding this meeting and that the leak could have happened digitally, and that is that someone got a hold of an email and decided to share it with somebody else who then dished it to the media. If you look at the Washington Post story, and the New York Times also has matching reporting on it now, there are officials who are U.S. officials who are current and former who are the sources for these stories. So that would suggest somebody inside government, somebody who used to be in government but is now in the private sector, Jesse.
They have to figure out, in fact, who had access to an email like that as well to narrow this down. Bob has a question for you, John.
John, if you ask, McMaster says his story is flat false. He wouldn't take any questions, but he said it was false. Yet the Washington Post, if this is a false story, was asked by the CIA and the NSA not to publish the name of the town, which is very significant, where this information came from, where our partner got the information and shared it with us. And for that to get out, even that to get out, is beyond comprehension, except in this White House. So why would the Washington Post make this up? Why would the CIA and the NSA say to the Washington Post, please withhold this information, and the Post did?
Well, it all depends on what type of document and what the intelligence was, Bob, that they're talking about. And I think that's what H.R. McMaster is talking about when he says that the story, as reported, is false. And again, I'm told that this is information that was both pertinent to threats against the United States and threats against Russia. And when you're trying to develop an ally in the war on terror and the fight against ISIS, you want to share some information that's relevant and pertinent to them to try to get them on board. But Bob, to your other point, this is information. It comes back to Russia again for this White House. And if this was a singular event, you could say, okay, fine, so they shared some information. But when you take this as a piece of the larger puzzle, there are some people here at the White House who say, we can't believe it's Russia, and it's Russia again, Bob.
All right, Greg has a question for you, John.
Yeah, I noticed the criticism of McMaster's is that he says the story is false, but he doesn't say what part is false because it sounded like a legal answer. So he can say if there's like one sliver of the story that's not right, then he can say the whole story isn't right. I'm wondering if that holds water in your opinion. Was that his way of a legal answer and not a real answer? And I'm also curious about Sean Spicer. I'm wondering if he's somewhere doing shots of Jägermeister in a fort made of pillows in the woods.
Well, I can tell you this much. He's not hiding out in the bushes here on the North Lawn. Did it sound like a legalese answer, or at least a legalese statement from H.R. McMaster? Yes, it did, because, again, we do not know what the actual document was. Was it a classified document? Was it a top secret document? Was it a code-worded document, as was reported by the Washington Post? We do not know. We do not know what part of the reporting is, quote, false. Now, as to Sean Spicer, he's still in his office right behind me. We do know that the communications staff, Sean Spicer, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Michael Dubke, were together in a meeting in the cabinet room with Steve Bannon. And at a couple of moments, because we were standing in the hallway not too far away, we heard some raised voices. So it's likely that that meeting got a little heated at times. Don't know what the content or what the substance of the meeting was, but it sounded like there were points of disagreement that were going on there. And no question, Greg, that this president is not happy with his communications operation as it has been. I don't know if you saw Sean Spicer during the briefing today, but I've never seen him like that. He barely cracked a smile today. He was kind of flat and forthright, and that's not the Sean Spicer that I know.
Okay, John, just a real quick follow-up, and then we're going to discuss at the table. But it seems so far, thus far, that Tillerson and Dina Powell and H.R. McMaster were on point in terms of, consistent with their statements about what transpired.
Yeah, I mean, there was consistency among the principals, and those were the three that were in there with the president. They were the senior administration officials. all on the same page. You can expect that they might be as well, because they're all working on this together. The big question here, Kimberly, is who was not on the same page, who thought that it would be appropriate to leak to the Washington Post and now the New York Times as well such sensitive information as to what happened in that meeting a week ago.
Yes, highly inappropriate and should be actionable when they make a determination. John, thank you for your report, and we'll check back in later if need be.
You know, can I just go ahead?